The Galactic Council had been in session for hours. The Grand Chamber was filled with representatives from different species, all discussing the future of the galaxy and how to ensure the survival of their own kind. The atmosphere was tense. Plans were being made for possible attacks from the humans, a species that many believed were still too primitive to pose any real threat. But deep down, there was a growing unease. A new, unsettling truth had begun to spread through the galaxy. Humans were not to be underestimated. Bonner, an elder representative from a powerful alien race, stood at the head of the table. His appearance was imposing, his tall figure cloaked in the robes of his people, but it was his eyes, sharp, intelligent, and filled with experience, that captured the attention of everyone in the room. For a moment, there was silence. Bonner cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the air as he prepared to address the council. "You all believe that the humans are nothing more than a primitive species," he began, his tone cold and calculated. "You think they are weak, too young, too small to matter in the grand scheme of things. But you are wrong, and that mistake will cost us dearly." The room was still. Representatives exchanged nervous glances. They had heard whispers of human ingenuity and strength, but many had dismissed it as exaggeration. The thought of being afraid of humans, especially their children, seemed absurd. Yet, Bonner's words carried weight, and everyone felt the tension grow. Bonner continued, his voice growing more intense. "I am here to warn you. We have made a grave mistake. We have underestimated them, and now we will all pay the price." He paused, letting his words sink in. "And it is not just the adults we should fear. It is the children. Yes, you heard me right. Human children." A murmur ran through the council. Children. How could they pose any threat at all? The room filled with disbelief, but Bonner wasn't finished. He leaned forward, locking eyes with the council members. "I have seen it with my own eyes," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "One human child destroyed an entire alien fleet." The room went silent. The council members stared at Bonner, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. The idea that a single child, a human child, could wipe out an entire fleet of technologically superior aliens seemed impossible. Bonner could see their doubt, but he knew the truth. He had lived through it, and now it was his job to make the rest of the galaxy understand the danger. Bonner slowly began to recount the tale. It was a story few had ever heard, one that had been kept hidden for a long time. It started on a remote planet, far away from the center of the galaxy. This planet, like many others, had been targeted by an alien invasion, an attempt to subdue the human population and claim their resources. The alien fleet descended upon the planet with all its power, confident that the humans, who were still in their early stages of technological development, would stand no chance. However, they were wrong. As Bonner spoke, the council listened closely, leaning in as they heard about the human child who had stood between their planet and the invaders. The child was no older than 8, a young girl from a small farming village. She had been playing in the fields when the alien forces arrived. Her family was terrified, and they quickly hid, hoping to avoid detection. But the child, unlike the adults, was not afraid. Bonner's voice grew darker as he described the child's actions. This little girl, not even old enough to understand the full extent of the threat, activated a secret weapon hidden deep within her village. The council's disbelief deepened. A secret weapon. For a child to even know about such a thing was incomprehensible. Bonner paused, taking a deep breath. The child activated a combat drone. A drone powered by artificial intelligence, one that had been hidden away by the humans for centuries, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't just any drone. This was an advanced, military-grade machine designed to take down entire fleets of invaders. The room was in shock. A child, no older than 8, had somehow activated a weapon capable of destroying an entire alien fleet. The council members struggled to process the information. This wasn't just a matter of advanced technology. It was about human resourcefulness, something that no one had predicted. Bonner continued, describing how the eye-powered drone took flight, cloaking itself in the atmosphere and silently hunting down the alien invaders. It was faster than anything the aliens had ever encountered. Their weapons, their ships, their technology, they were all useless against this new enemy. The drone systematically picked off the invaders one by one, using precision tactics that had been developed by the humans over centuries. It wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a strategic execution, a lesson that humans could turn the tables on even the most advanced species. The alien fleet was in chaos. They had expected an easy victory, but instead, they were being hunted, picked apart by a weapon they couldn't even see. The battle didn't last long. Within hours, the entire fleet was decimated. The human child had done what the most powerful armies in the galaxy could not. Bonner stopped speaking, allowing the weight of his story to settle over the council. The room was silent. The representatives exchanged uneasy glances. How could they have been so wrong? How could they have overlooked such a simple, yet devastating, fact? Humans were not like any other species. They were capable of extraordinary things, even at their most vulnerable. Bonner's voice grew tense as he concluded his tale. The galaxy hasn't learned. We continue to underestimate them, and at our peril. They are not the weak, primitive species we once thought. And if we are not careful, they will be the ones to shape the future of this galaxy. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. It was clear now that humans were not to be taken lightly. But the question remained, what would they do about it? Bonner had issued a warning, but it was up to the council to decide whether they would act on it or dismiss it as another paranoid delusion. As the meeting drew to a close, the representatives were left with a chilling realization. The humans had power, and that power was something they could not ignore. The council knew now that they had a choice to make. Either they would take the necessary steps to prevent the rise of humanity, or they would face the consequences of underestimating a species that had already proven itself more dangerous than they could have imagined. The scene shifted from the council room to the darkness of space. Bonner's story had left the council members uneasy, their minds racing with the implications of what they had just heard. But the truth was undeniable. Humanity had power they had not fully understood. Now, it was time for the galaxy to witness the strange and terrifying capabilities of Earth's children firsthand. A new mission was being launched, and it was unlike anything the Council had ever prepared for. A galactic scout team was selected for the mission. Their task was clear: infiltrate Earth, gather intelligence on its technology, and most importantly, learn more about the children who had become a symbol of fear across the galaxy. The team was made up of elite warriors and scientists from multiple alien races, each with one objective: to figure out what made human children so terrifying. The scout team's spacecraft glided silently through the atmosphere, cloaked to avoid detection. The team leader, a tall and imposing creature named Ktarkle, stood at the helm, watching Earth's surface below them. "Prepare yourselves," he instructed his team. "We are about to encounter something unlike anything we have faced before." As the spacecraft descended into a small rural area, the scout team began their mission to observe the children of Earth. They had no intention of harming them, at least not yet. Their primary goal was to study, to understand how these children had developed such advanced technology. It was still unclear how a species as young as humanity had managed to become so resourceful, so dangerous. They had to know what made them tick. The team landed just outside a small village, cloaking their ship once again to remain undetected. The scouts disembarked silently, their footfalls barely making a sound on the ground. They observed the children playing in a field not far from their landing site. At first glance, they appeared harmless, innocent even, just like any other children playing on a warm afternoon. The scouts watched with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. These children, who seemed so simple and unthreatening, could have been part of any alien race's normal life. But something about them felt different. Something didn't sit right with the scout team. They had been briefed about humanity's potential for advanced technology, but seeing it in action, especially in the hands of children, was unsettling. The scene seemed peaceful. The children were laughing and running around, playing games, picking flowers. But then, as if the calm was just a disguise, one of the children picked up a small stone from the ground. At first, it seemed like just an innocent game, a typical stone-throwing contest that many children in the galaxy played. But then, as the child threw the stone, something unexpected happened. The stone, normally too small to be of any consequence, became something else entirely. It shimmered in the sunlight and vanished from view. The alien scout standing closest to the field, a member of the Vizar race, was struck directly in the face by the invisible projectile. Within moments, his vision was clouded, and he stumbled back, blinded. He let out a roar of confusion and pain, grabbing at his face as his eyes failed him completely. "What just happened?" Exarchel demanded, stepping forward to inspect the situation. The scout who had been struck was now blind, his vision completely blocked. It was cloaked," the scout mumbled, still dazed. "The stone, it was cloaked." The entire scout team froze. The stone, an object as simple as any rock on Earth, had been enhanced with technology beyond their comprehension. A cloaking device, small enough to fit inside a child's hand. This was not the work of ordinary humans. It was the work of a species with knowledge far beyond anything the Galactic Council had anticipated. How could a child create such a thing? Exarchel muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief. He motioned for his team to fall back and regroup. But before they could move, the children continued with their game, seemingly oblivious to the scout's presence. It was then that the team realized just how vulnerable they were. The children, who seemed so innocent, were playing a game. But they were not playing by the rules. One of the scouts, Jethra, whispered urgently to Exarchel, "This is no ordinary game. It's a trap." And just as she said that, the children's laughter grew louder. As if on cue, a series of small drones, no bigger than a child's toy, suddenly appeared out of nowhere. They flew in tight formations, cloaked just like the stone had been, silently buzzing through the air. They began circling the scout team, who now realized that they were surrounded. Exarchel's eyes narrowed. "We've been outsmarted. These children are using the terrain, the environment, against us. The drones are scouting us, tracking our every move. They know where we are, and they know we can't see them." The scouts attempted to engage their own technology, but it was no use. Their advanced scanners, their weaponry, all rendered useless against the invisible attacks. The drones were not just simple tools. They were weapons designed specifically for covert warfare. Jethra cursed under her breath as a series of small explosions erupted around them. "They've set traps. We're walking into their maze." Exarchel turned to his team, now fully aware of how dangerous the situation had become. "We need to fall back, regroup at the ship. There's no way we can outmaneuver them here without more intel." But before they could retreat, the children began to approach. The scouts, in an attempt to remain unseen, crouched low to the ground, hoping to avoid detection. But it was clear that the children had not only been waiting for them, they had been tracking them for far longer than the scouts realized. The children were remarkably composed, their expressions calm and focused as they closed in. It was almost as if they had expected this encounter all along. The scouts had been fooled, lured into a trap they had never seen coming. They had been trying to observe the children from a distance, underestimating them as harmless. But now, they were the ones being watched. The fear that crept into the hearts of the scout team was palpable. They had come to Earth believing that the children would be nothing more than distractions, something they could safely ignore. But now, the stakes had risen. The humans, especially their children, had proven to be far more dangerous than the scouts had ever anticipated. The children, still unbothered by the chaos unfolding around them, seemed to be orchestrating their next move with an unsettling precision. It was clear now that the scouts had underestimated not only the technology humans possessed, but also their ability to use it in ways that were cunning, dangerous, and entirely outside the expectations of the galaxy. As the scout team prepared to leave the field, realizing they were in over their heads, one final drone shot up into the sky, visible only for a brief moment before it vanished. It carried a message, a warning to the Galactic Council. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The scout team retreated back to their ship, but not before they were marked by the children's advanced technology. They had learned a valuable lesson. The next time they encountered humanity, things would be different. The scout team was in retreat, but they couldn't escape fast enough. Their mission had gone horribly wrong, and now they were trapped in a field of enemy technology they couldn't comprehend. As they hurried to the landing site of their ship, they were met by a small, unexpected figure standing in their path. A child, a mere 10 years old. Xarkle stopped, his heart racing as he scanned the scene. The rest of the scout team froze, unsure of what to do. This was no ordinary child. This was a human child, standing in the middle of a battlefield with the calmness of someone who had seen it all before. The child's eyes, cold and focused, met Xarkle's. There was no fear in them, only determination. The scout team had underestimated humanity's children, and now they were about to pay the price. The child raised a hand, and suddenly, the ground beneath the alien's feet trembled. It wasn't an earthquake. No, it was much worse. It was an attack. The ground cracked open as massive, cloaked drones emerged from the earth, their sleek bodies shimmering as they activated their engines. The scout team's panic was instant. They had barely registered what was happening when the first explosion tore through the air. The drones, now fully visible, launched themselves at the alien forces, their weapons glowing with lethal intent. The force was devastating. The first drone targeted one of the alien robots, a hulking machine that had been part of the scouting party. It swooped down, its energy weapons glowing bright, and in seconds, the massive robot was torn apart. Pieces of metal flew in every direction, as the robot's systems fried from the impact. The scout team watched in shock as the human-made drones, autonomous and armed with advanced weaponry, dismantled their robotic army one by one. "How can this be possible?" Jethra, one of the scouts, muttered. This is beyond anything we've seen before. These children are commanding the drones." Xarkle clenched his fists, his mind racing. This wasn't just about human children having advanced technology. This was something else entirely. These children had been trained, not just in battle tactics, but in the strategic use of high-tech weaponry and AI. They had been prepared for war, prepared to outsmart their enemies. They had linked themselves to Earth's military AI systems, systems so advanced that the galaxy's best tech was nothing in comparison. The child in front of them wasn't just a kid. He was a commander, a strategist, an engineer. He had access to weapons and technology that no one had expected from Earth. And what was worse for the scout team was that they were utterly unprepared for it. The drones zipped through the air, cloaked and moving with impossible speed. The alien scout team's defenses were useless. Their weapons, designed to destroy armies, were now rendered ineffective by Earth's ingenuity. One by one, the alien robots were sliced apart by the drones' precision strikes. Sparks and fire lit up the sky as the once mighty war machines crumbled under the onslaught. But it wasn't just the drones that had the aliens on edge. The children, working in tandem with their robotic allies, were using the landscape to their advantage. They had turned the battlefield into a deadly maze, guiding the drones with strategic intelligence that came from their understanding of Earth's geography and technology. In the distance, a small group of children appeared, running through the forest. They moved swiftly, their coordination flawless. As they passed by, they triggered a series of explosions planted in the trees, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The trees, once an innocuous part of the landscape, now became deadly obstacles, camouflaging Earth's advanced warfare in plain sight. The aliens were caught in the middle of it all. Their once invincible forces, now under attack from both the air and the ground, began to falter. Kaxarkel's team had no idea how to respond. The children were everywhere, working with technology that was beyond their understanding, and there was no way to predict their next move. Kaxarkel's voice crackled through the communication system. "We need to get out of here now," he ordered, but it was already too late. From every corner of the field, drones continued to strike with surgical precision. The alien robots tried to retaliate, but their weapons malfunctioned, their systems failing under the force of Earth's superior technology. Kaxarkel watched in horror as his comrades were torn apart by drones that they couldn't even see coming. But what made the scene even more terrifying was the humanity of it all. The children weren't just controlling machines. They were using them with a sense of purpose, with an understanding of warfare that was eerily familiar. The way they moved, the way they coordinated their attacks, it was as though they had been trained by military minds. The innocence of childhood clashed violently with the cold, ruthless precision of war. In the distance, another explosion rocked the battlefield, sending up a plume of smoke and fire. The child standing in front of Kaxarkel raised his hand once again, activating a new wave of drones. But this time, something was different. These weren't just regular drones. These were combat drones, heavily armed and designed for direct confrontation. The moment they appeared, they launched themselves at the remaining alien forces with ruthless efficiency. Kaxarkel's eyes widened as he watched the drones swarm, engaging in close-quarters combat with the remaining alien robots. These drones were designed to fight, not just scout or gather information. They were armed with high-powered plasma guns, and they tore through the alien robots as if they were nothing more than fragile toys. Sparks flew, and metal melted under the intensity of the blasts. "This is impossible," Jethra gasped, her voice filled with terror. "How could they have built this?" "It's not just about what they've built," Kaxarkel whispered. "It's about how they've used it. They've turned everything, every tool, every piece of technology into a weapon. And the worst part is, they're just children." The words hit Kaxarkel like a punch to the gut. The scout team had always viewed humanity as inferior, weak, and naive. But now, they were learning the hard way that Earth's children were something far more dangerous. They were the product of a society that had learned how to adapt, how to innovate, and how to fight. And the galaxy, for all its advanced technology and superiority, was now facing the terrifying reality that humanity's children were not to be underestimated. With the battle raging around him, Kaxarkel turned to his team, his voice barely audible above the sounds of the explosions. "We have to retreat. There's no winning this. Not today." But even as the scouts attempted to fall back to their ship, the children's drones continued their relentless assault, ensuring that the message would be loud and clear. Humanity's children were a force to be reckoned with. The chaos of the battlefield was relentless. The sound of explosions, the whir of drones, and the crackling of laser fire filled the air as the human children and alien invaders clashed with a fury that no one had expected. Earth's children, so small and fragile in the eyes of the invaders, had turned the tables on the galactic scouts. Yet despite the overwhelming strength and intelligence that the children displayed, there was still one thing that remained unbroken: their humanity. Bonner, a seasoned alien soldier, had always viewed his species as superior. His race had conquered countless worlds, and he had seen the depths of warfare in ways that few could imagine. But there, in the midst of the destruction, something unexpected happened. Bonner had crossed paths with a young human girl, a girl who, for some reason, hadn't yet been consumed by the violence around her. The girl was no older than 8 or 9, with bright eyes that held both innocence and strength. She didn't fear Bonner. Instead, she looked at him as if he were just another soldier, no different from the ones fighting beside her. As the battle raged on, the two found themselves near one another. The alien soldier's focus was broken by the sight of the girl, crouched behind a wreckage, holding something, a small, shiny object clutched tightly in her hands. It was one of the advanced eye-based weapons she had used to disable the alien forces earlier. Bonner, despite his training and years of combat experience, felt a strange sense of connection to this child. The human girl wasn't like the others. She wasn't a mindless soldier, driven solely by the will to fight. No, she was different. She looked at him as though she could see beyond the war, beyond the violence, and straight into the heart of his soul. "You're hurt," the girl said, her voice soft amidst the chaos. She gestured toward Bonner's arm, where a deep gash had formed during the battle. He had been so focused on the fight that he hadn't noticed the pain. The soldier blinked, confused. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. No one had ever cared. "I'm fine," he muttered, wiping the blood away with a metallic hand. "What about you? Aren't you afraid?" The girl tilted her head, her eyes filled with curiosity and something else. Something Bonner couldn't quite understand. "Afraid? I've seen so much worse. My friends, my family, they've already fought. Now we fight so others don't have to." Her words, so simple and yet so profound, struck Bonner deep within. The human race, with all its flaws and imperfections, had something that the aliens could not comprehend. They had heart. They had love. They had the capacity to care, even in the face of war. This young girl, with her innocent eyes and small frame, was a soldier not just of war, but of compassion. Bonner had heard stories of human compassion, but he had never understood them until now. He listened intently as the girl began to speak again, sharing stories of the soldiers she had lost, her friends, her family, those who had given everything for the fight against the invaders. As she spoke, Bonner began to realize just how deep the connection was between these children and their people. It wasn't just about survival or victory. It was about preserving something far greater, the essence of humanity. "My brother," she continued softly, "he died protecting me. He told me to keep fighting, to keep believing in what's right. He said, never stop, even when it feels impossible." The soldier's heart tightened at her words. It was something he hadn't expected. A child speaking about loss, speaking about sacrifice with such maturity. He had spent so many years fighting without purpose, without understanding. But here, in the midst of this war, he was beginning to understand. "I'm sorry," Bonner said quietly, though he didn't know if the girl heard him over the sounds of the ongoing battle. "I didn't know." She smiled at him, a small, sad smile, before turning her attention back to the battlefield. "You didn't know, but now you do." At that moment, the battlefield around them changed. The roar of gunfire and explosions seemed to quiet as Bonner's eyes scanned the horizon. A massive AI-controlled battle mech, a war machine designed to decimate any foe, loomed in the distance, its weapons powered and ready to unleash destruction. The machine was heading straight for them, and there was no time to escape. The girl didn't panic. She didn't run or scream. Instead, she stood tall, clutching the weapon she had used to help bring down the alien robots earlier. But Bonner could see the fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for the others around her. Without a moment's hesitation, Bonner made his decision. He had witnessed the courage of humanity, and now it was his turn to act. He had seen the depths of war, but he had never seen something so pure, so worth fighting for. The mech charged toward them, its metal feet thundering across the ground. Bonner knew that the girl stood no chance against such a powerful force. But he also knew something else. If he didn't act, she would die, just like so many others. With a surge of adrenaline, Bonner rushed toward the mech. The girl shouted after him, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. This wasn't just about the battle anymore. This was about something far greater than victory. It was about protecting the innocent, protecting those who fought for something worth saving. The mech raised its arm, preparing to strike. But before it could bring its devastating weapon down, Bonner dove at it, launching himself into the air with all his strength. The force of the impact sent a shockwave through the area as Bonner's body collided with the mech's chest, sending it crashing to the ground in a massive explosion. For a moment, everything was silent. The battlefield seemed to freeze as Bonner lay on the ground, his body smoking from the blast. The mech, now disabled, lay in pieces around him. The girl, tears in her eyes, rushed to his side. "Why did you save me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Bonner's gaze softened as he looked up at her, his final words barely a whisper. "Because you're worth saving. All of you. You've taught me that, what it means to fight, what it means to care. I never understood it before, but I do now." With those words, Bonner's eyes closed, his body going still. The girl, her heart breaking, gently touched his hand, knowing that a hero had just sacrificed everything for her and her people. "I'm fine," he muttered, wiping the blood away with a metallic hand. "What about you? Aren't you afraid?" The girl tilted her head, her eyes filled with curiosity and something else. Something Bonner couldn't quite understand. "Afraid? I've seen so much worse. My friends, my family, they've already fought. Now we fight so others don't have to." Her words, so simple and yet so profound, struck Bonner deep within. The human race, with all its flaws and imperfections, had something that the aliens could not comprehend. They had heart. They had love. They had the capacity to care, even in the face of war. This young girl, with her innocent eyes and small frame, was a soldier not just of war, but of compassion. Bonner had heard stories of human compassion, but he had never understood them until now. He listened intently as the girl began to speak again, sharing stories of the soldiers she had lost, her friends, her family, those who had given everything for the fight against the invaders. As she spoke, Bonner began to realize just how deep the connection was between these children and their people. It wasn't just about survival or victory. It was about preserving something far greater, the essence of humanity. "My brother," she continued softly, "he died protecting me. He told me to keep fighting, to keep believing in what's right. He said, never stop, even when it feels impossible." The soldier's heart tightened at her words. It was something he hadn't expected. A child speaking about loss, speaking about sacrifice with such maturity. He had spent so many years fighting without purpose, without understanding. But here, in the midst of this war, he was beginning to understand. "I'm sorry," Bonner said quietly, though he didn't know if the girl heard him over the sounds of the ongoing battle. "I didn't know." She smiled at him, a small, sad smile, before turning her attention back to the battlefield. "You didn't know, but now you do." At that moment, the battlefield around them changed. The roar of gunfire and explosions seemed to quiet as Bonner's eyes scanned the horizon. A massive AI-controlled battle mech, a war machine designed to decimate any foe, loomed in the distance, its weapons powered and ready to unleash destruction. The machine was heading straight for them, and there was no time to escape. The girl didn't panic. She didn't run or scream. Instead, she stood tall, clutching the weapon she had used to help bring down the alien robots earlier. But Bonner could see the fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for the others around her. Without a moment's hesitation, Bonner made his decision. He had witnessed the courage of humanity, and now it was his turn to act. He had seen the depths of war, but he had never seen something so pure, so worth fighting for. The mech charged toward them, its metal feet thundering across the ground. Bonner knew that the girl stood no chance against such a powerful force. But he also knew something else. If he didn't act, she would die, just like so many others. With a surge of adrenaline, Bonner rushed toward the mech. The girl shouted after him, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. This wasn't just about the battle anymore. This was about something far greater than victory. It was about protecting the innocent, protecting those who fought for something worth saving. The mech raised its arm, preparing to strike. But before it could bring its devastating weapon down, Bonner dove at it, launching himself into the air with all his strength. The force of the impact sent a shockwave through the area as Bonner's body collided with the mech's chest, sending it crashing to the ground in a massive explosion. For a moment, everything was silent. The battlefield seemed to freeze as Bonner lay on the ground, his body smoking from the blast. The mech, now disabled, lay in pieces around him. The girl, tears in her eyes, rushed to his side. "Why did you save me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Bonner's gaze softened as he looked up at her, his final words barely a whisper. "Because you're worth saving. All of you. You've taught me what it means to fight, what it means to care. I never understood it before, but I do now." With those words, Bonner's eyes closed, his body going still. The girl, her heart breaking, gently touched his hand, knowing that a hero had just sacrificed everything for her and her people. The moment was a turning point, not just for Bonner, but for the entire alien force. The death of one of their own had created a ripple of doubt. It wasn't just the technology or the power of the human children that made them formidable. It was their humanity, their capacity for love, sacrifice, and selflessness. As the alien forces regrouped, they could no longer see humanity as weak, as something to be crushed underfoot. They had learned a lesson they would never forget. Never underestimate a species that values its people so deeply that even a child would fight for them. And for the humans, the death of Bonner had become a symbol of what could be achieved when compassion and strength came together. The battlefield was calm, for now. The sounds of destruction that had filled the air for days had quieted, replaced by an eerie silence. Both sides knew that the end was coming, but no one knew how it would unfold. The alien forces, though vastly outnumbering the humans, had come to understand something they never expected. Humanity was not just a species to be conquered, but a force to be reckoned with. They had witnessed the strength, courage, and unpredictable power of Earth's children, and it had shaken them to their core. After the death of Bonner, the alien forces had retreated to regroup. Their commanders, leaders of the Galactic Council, had all witnessed the unexpected outcome of their invasion. The story of a single child, armed with nothing more than her intelligence, heart, and advanced technology, had made them reconsider everything. The very foundation of their belief in AI supremacy had been shattered. How could a race so dependent on AI, on technology, be outsmarted by a human child? It was something they could not comprehend, and it terrified them. But there was no turning back. The invasion had already begun, and the Galactic Council's orders were clear. Earth had to be wiped out. The human race was a threat, and their unexpected ability to fight back had proved that. But now, the question remained, how could they defeat an enemy that was so resilient? How could they defeat a people who, even in the face of death, were willing to sacrifice everything for each other? It was time for the final battle. The remaining alien forces, reeling from the loss of Bonner and their failed attempts to overpower the children, began their final strike. They launched a massive orbital bombardment, their ships and weapons aimed at Earth's surface. The goal was clear: wipe out the human presence once and for all. The bombardment would rain down fire and destruction, reducing Earth to nothing but ashes. As the alien ships fired their weapons, the sky over Earth darkened with the approaching onslaught. The images of laser blasts and energy fields lighting up the sky were like a nightmare come to life. It seemed like there was no hope left for humanity. The children, the soldiers, and even the leaders of Earth's defense were bracing themselves for the inevitable end. But in the midst of this overwhelming power, a small figure stood tall, undaunted, resolute. The child who had saved Bonner now stepped forward, her heart filled with both grief and determination. She was no longer just a child. She was the symbol of Earth's fight for survival. The loss of Bonner had only fueled her resolve. She knew what was at stake. If humanity was to survive, they had to fight back, no matter the cost. But this time, she wasn't fighting with drones or cloaked stones. This time, she had something far more powerful, an ancient human weapon, a weapon that could disable the very AI systems that the alien forces relied upon. The weapon was a relic from Earth's past, a piece of technology that had long been forgotten by most, buried in the annals of history. It was a superweapon, capable of sending a powerful electromagnetic pulse, EMP, across the galaxy, disabling AI systems and rendering them useless. The alien invaders had long relied on their artificial intelligence to control their ships, weapons, and even their battle tactics. Without it, they were nothing more than mindless machines, and that's exactly what the child intended to use against them. With the weapon in her hands, she activated it. The hum of the super weapon filled the air as its energy began to gather. The alien fleet, still in the process of unleashing their destructive bombardment, was unaware of the impending threat. The child's eyes locked onto the sky, watching as the orbital fleet continued its approach. The EMP pulse fired, sending a shockwave of energy that rippled through space and time. The impact was immediate and devastating. The alien ships that had been so confident in their power and superiority were suddenly brought to a halt. Their AI systems, once so reliable, were now completely disabled. The ships, once nimble and deadly, fell from the sky like lifeless husks, their weapons useless, and their navigational systems offline. The legacy of this war would be one of resilience, of strength in the face of impossible odds. Earth had shown the universe that humanity would never again be an easy target. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate the humans. They were more than just a race of beings. They were a force to be reckoned with, and their children were the embodiment of that power. As the child stood there, lost in thought, a sudden disturbance in the atmosphere caught her attention. A strange humming sound filled the air, growing louder by the second. She turned her head toward the sky, her expression hardening. In the distance, a ship, an alien ship, entered Earth's orbit. It was unlike any vessel she had seen before, sleek and silent, moving with an eerie precision. Its dark silhouette loomed over the planet, casting a shadow that stretched far below. The child's heart raced as she watched the ship's movements. It wasn't just hovering, it was scanning the planet, its sensors sweeping across Earth's surface. She felt a cold chill run down her spine. This was not a casual exploration. The ship was here for a reason. Was it another invasion? Had the Galactic Council learned nothing from their defeat? Or was this something far worse? A new threat, one that had yet to reveal itself. The child's mind raced. She had just witnessed the power of humanity. She had been a part of it. But now she faced something else. The peaceful resolution she had hoped for seemed to be slipping away. Earth had won this battle, but the war for survival was far from over. The galaxy was a vast, dangerous place, and humanity had only just begun to prove itself. With a clenched fist, she took a step forward, her gaze never leaving the alien ship. The message was clear. This was not over. Earth had won this round, but the fight for its future was still unfolding. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The military, the leaders of Earth's defense forces, they had seen the ship too. Their faces were grim, and their eyes held the same determination she felt within herself. The victory had been hard-earned, but they were already preparing for the next challenge. "Are you ready?" a voice asked, breaking the silence. The child nodded, her face set in a determined expression. "We've proven we're ready," she said, her voice strong, echoing the strength she had witnessed in humanity. "The galaxy won't forget what we've done, but we'll be ready for whatever comes next." The alien ship in orbit remained silent, as though watching them, waiting for them to make the next move. And as the child stared up at the dark sky, she realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven its strength, its heart, and its ability to fight against overwhelming odds. But the universe was still vast, filled with mysteries and dangers. This victory was important, but it would only be the first of many battles for humanity's future. She turned to face the others, her eyes shining with determination. "Humanity is ready," she said again, her voice unwavering. We've shown the galaxy that we will never back down, and we'll fight to protect what's ours. The child's words were not just a promise. They were a declaration that Earth would no longer be a target, that humanity would stand tall, face whatever came their way, and fight with everything they had. As the alien ship continued its silent watch, the child knew that whatever happened next, humanity would be ready. The stars above seemed to shimmer, as though acknowledging her resolve. Earth had fought back, and now the galaxy would see what humanity was truly capable of. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer a race to be underestimated. The legacy of the battle they had fought would echo through the stars for generations to come. And as the child stood, resolute, her gaze fixed on the alien ship in orbit, she knew that Earth's story was far from over. The war for survival might continue, but humanity had already proven its worth. The galaxy had learned to fear the human spirit, especially the spirit of its children.